This week on Newsnight, arts organizations work to ensure funding in the next Florida budget after the governor vetoed $32 million in state grants over the summer. A look at how arts and cultural groups are making ends meet and the work ahead to secure future funding. Newsnight starts now.
Hello, I'm Steve Mort. Welcome to Newsnight, where we take an in-depth look at the top stories and issues in Central Florida and how they shape our community. Tonight, we're bringing you an encore presentation of our program earlier this year, checking in on Central Florida's arts community. The biggest news affecting the region's cultural organizations this year came in June, when Governor Ron DeSantis vetoed tens of millions of dollars in grant funding for the arts that had been approved by lawmakers. In striking the funding from the state budget, the governor cited his concerns over sexual content at fringe festivals.
So you have your tax dollars being given in grants to things like the Fringe Festival, which is like a sexual festival where they're doing all this stuff. And it's like, how many of you think your tax dollars should go to fund that? Not very many people would do that. And so when I see money being spent that way, I have to be the one to stand up for taxpayers and say, you know what, that is an inappropriate use of taxpayer dollars. And I think the legislature needs to reevaluate how that's being done. We don't need to say that somebody that's working hard is paying taxes. I can go to you and say, hey, we've got a very small budget compared to our state's population. We have a low tax burden, all this, but this transportation, these roads are important. I can sell that. Education's important. I can sell that. Preserving our natural resource is important. I can sell that. I can't sell the Fringe Festival to taxpayers, nor would I want to try to sell the Fringe Festival to taxpayers.
Governor DeSantis there. The decision to cut the funding from the 2024-25 budget has sparked a concerted effort by arts groups and their supporters to secure future funding, both locally and from Tallahassee. In a moment, we'll bring you two panels recorded in July this year with leaders from Central Florida's arts community. But first, here's a part of an interview I did with Hillary Brooke, the executive director of the Theatre South Playhouse in Dr. Phillips, about how the veto was affecting her organization.
It was quite a shock. We worked so hard to get that grant. Besides the hours of the application process and the screening process, we sat in front of a panel of people and had to answer questions. We were so thrilled to receive the $25,000 award that we received. And that was a year ago. So that was already that money in theory has been spent. We've put it into our fall budget. And to find out that money is just gone. And we found out 2 weeks before the date we were supposed to receive it. So it was a really hard day here at the theater.
How does your organization usually spend that kind of money, and what will not having it mean for you now?
We have a wonderful internship program. We love to mentor young artists who want to either pursue a career in theater or backstage crew. We have an internship program, and we were so excited to finally be able to have a paid internship. So that is the first thing that's going to have a dramatic impact. We will not have the funds that we wanted to. We're going to be able to give them a stipend, which will be nice and cover gas money, and we're still excited to have that. But that's the first thing that's going to be hit. We have a huge production of Annie, part of our professional season, and that money went right into the show budget, the set, the costumes. So all of that's going to suffer. And then our youth training show, we're doing our first ever Finding Nemo Junior here at Theater South, and that money will go directly, we'll feel a huge loss in that production as well.
Is there anything you can do to try to mitigate the impacts that you're expecting?
Absolutely. We are determined to get that money back. We are not cutting anything. We are going to keep on going. We've always been able to survive with little, so we are just going to pull our resources together. We already have a plan in place to do some concerts to raise some money, lots of fundraising. Lots of artists in the community have reached out to me asking how they can help, which is just such a gift. So this time I'm saying, yes, please help, and we're going to come together and raise the money ourselves. We've personally reached out to lawmakers, both federal and state, to let them know of our situation and to keep them posted as to what's going on. And we've actually had many of them come and visit and talk to us and sit down. And when they come here, they're so impressed with what they see, and they're always very hopeful that we can get past this and that there's other means and ways to get the funding back in other ways. We make a lot happen with a little, and it would just really be great if now more than ever if people, our community, come out and check out Theatre South Playhouse and just see what we're about.
Hilary Brook from the Theatre South Playhouse in Dr. Phillips. You can find a link to the theatre's website at wcf.org/newsnight. Well, let's bring in our first panel tonight to discuss some of these important issues facing the arts community. Joining me in the studio this week, Gabriel Pricer, General Director and CEO of Opera Orlando. Jennifer Evans, President and CEO of United Arts of Central Florida. And Matt Palm, who writes about the arts for the Orlando Sentinel. Thank you guys so much for coming in today. Really appreciate your time. Matt, let me just start with you and start by talking about the rationale for the veto. The governor has been criticized for, I guess, collectively cutting all grant funding from groups. But what are his concerns? What do we hear?
The only definitive statement that his press office has ever made to me is that what he said at a press conference, that he found the fringe festivals to be sexual in nature.
Specifically fringe festivals, correct?
Yes. And that he felt like that was an inappropriate use of taxpayer money, so he vetoed the entire line. Now, I will tell you, most experts, people in the field, political analysts who I spoke with, said that probably isn't the real reason. He was actually just working on numbers and finances and just trying to get the budget down to the size he wanted.
And just to be clear, this is a veto at grant funding, right? Not all individual appropriations for all arts groups.
Correct. There are some major arts projects that were funded, including in our own city, the new Holocaust Museum that they're working on downtown that received money. But this is a very specific set of grants that arts groups depend on for things. Just general operating expenses is one of the big ones that is part of that.
Well, let's break all this down a little bit. Gabe, let's talk about the practicalities, right, of the funding veto. Hilary Brook from the Theatre South Playhouse told me that they're taking steps over there to make up the shortfall that they're facing. I mean, are there steps that individual arts organizations, one of which you run, can take to try to reduce the gap? And are you guys experiencing any impacts yourself?
It's a huge impact. You know, it's a competitive process to begin with. You spend your time to fill out all the grant paperwork, you know, get all your numbers, your statistics. It's reviewed by a panel. All of that happened, and then for it to be taken out from underneath you. Know, this is funding we all budgeted for. We all expected it. We knew there was some type of cut coming, but we didn't expect it to be completely zeroed out. So it was a shock. It was a big surprise. Obviously, there's always ways to remedy that. I think we're all trying to reach out to the state. We're all trying to lobby for, hey, is there any chance this could be, decided again? Can this be reviewed? And in the meantime, for the opera specifically, we're very grateful, to our community. We have amazing donors, individuals who give. I mean, we are a charity, we are a 501c3, so it's tax deductible. So we're able to turn to them in this time of crisis. Other groups might not have the type of donor base that we have at the opera, though, and they might rely more on tuition. You think about children's museums or youth symphonies, right? They don't have a large donor base, it's more children based. And this funding is really kind of critical for those groups.
Interesting. I mean, at the same time, though, Jennifer, your collaborative campaign for 2024 exceeded its goal, right? I mean, is there strength in local support for the arts? Does that indicate that? And can it make up the gap?
So let's be real clear on the gap. The gap for Central Florida, which is the area for which the collaborative campaign, the annual campaign runs, is $6.9 million. This year we raised $6.8 million in the collaborative campaign. So already the public sector has stepped up with 6.8, and now the governor has cut 6.9. So it's a huge gap to fill when you think that the private sector, we've grown Since coming out of the pandemic, since 2021, we've grown the private sector giving through the collaborative campaign by 48%. So a huge growth in private sector giving in the arts over the last 3 years. And then to have this extreme, so it's dollar for dollar what the public gives to what the governor cut for Central Florida. So a major impact. When we look at private sector giving, we, raise money for the arts year-round. Everybody is seeking funding for their education programs through, as well as ticket sales. So really important for people to understand that the ticket that they buy to attend the opera or to go to the Science Center or to participate, in an art class does not cover the full operating costs of an arts organization. Yeah. So these operating grants from the state are fixed costs. These are our utilities, our health insurance, our employees, salaries. So this is not about cutting, a special scenery or costume.
A special project.
Right. This is about real fixed costs of doing the business of the arts. So we are looking at different strategies, but I will tell you, I know that at least 15 of the organizations have already gone to their loyal donors and asked them to make it up. For us, it's a $150,000 cut to our budget. That is substantial. There is not one place for us to go to make up those dollars. And as Matt said, our fiscal year began July 1. So
the timing was terrible.
The timing was extreme. It's really impactful and very serious. In Central Florida, we have an ongoing advocacy plan. So we meet with legislators throughout the year. We communicate with them about the impact of the arts for their constituencies year-round. So this isn't just a one-time ask. It's a constant relationship with our elected officials, especially in Tallahassee. Then we go to Tallahassee every year during the legislative session to make the case for the arts, to talk about the economic impact, to talk about the educational outcomes that the arts produce. So this is ongoing. So that will not end, right? And as the state continues to be economically viable, because they are having surpluses, that they will reinvest in the arts as a catalyst for many things in our state. But we're not going to stop making sure that our state elected officials and local officials know the value of the arts to the economy, the health and well-being of our community, to tourism. Education.
The economic impact is massive.
Well, talking about tourism and maybe spending of tourist development tax dollars, local governments seem to be doubling down on the arts and culture groups in their budgets. I mean, Gabe, do you think local government support can help in a meaningful way?
Absolutely. Orange County has been amazing. They have not only the tourism grant program for local arts groups, but also a venue subsidy grant. They also added diversity, equity, inclusion grant this last season. I mean, they really have, like you said, doubled down in their investment, as has the city of Orlando has a mayor's matching grant that we're proud to be a recipient of at Opera Orlando for our youth company. So I think they really see the value, not just in the tourism dollars, but the education, the outreach impact, the diversity, everything that the arts have to offer. They see the value here, and we're very grateful to Orange County and the city.
What have you been hearing, Matt?
I was going to chime in on that, because what's interesting is, when I speak to the local governments, they are, you're absolutely right, they are completely invested in the local arts. They understand not only the quality of life addition it brings to Central Florida, but also the economic impact it has with people who go to shows and concerts, end up at restaurants, end up in bars, end up paying for parking and babysitting and all kinds of other expenses. But they also kind of warned me that they have their own processes, they have their own procedures. Like you're saying, there's different grants, there's different ways the tourist development tax can be spent and procedures set up to do that. So
all of these grants are competitive and panels.
It's not like they can just reach into their pockets and give them more money to make up for the lack of state funding, because it all has to go through the proper procedures, as it should, for accountability and safeguards.
A very important conversation for sure. My thanks to Gabe Pricer from Opera Orlando, Jennifer Evans from United Arts of Central Florida, Matt Palm from the Orlando Sentinel. Thanks so much for coming in, guys.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your time. In a moment, our conversation will continue with 3 arts organizations all tackling differing challenges in 2024. We'll be right back. Well, let's pick up our conversation on the arts in Central Florida now. Joining me in the studio, Chris Brown, Executive Director of the Orlando Family Stage, Mariah Roman, Curator and Visual Artist at Art of Collab, and Justin McChoney, Interim Executive Director and Artistic Director as well at Central Florida Community Arts. Thank you all so much for coming in. Really appreciate your time today. Chris, you wrote an op-ed for the Orlando Sentinel about the governor's veto of grant funding for arts groups. You wrote that it was a devastating blow to our community. Why?
It's important funding for so many things beyond the entertainment that's on our stages, right? We are a place for kids and families, and it's a place where kids learn how to become a good human and learn things like bravery and empathy. Sure. And when I think at the time when the funding gets cut, only a few weeks out from when we're supposed to receive those dollars, it's devastating. It would be devastating to any business.
You wrote also, Mariah, an op-ed for the Sentinel recently on the importance of supporting local artists. You called them the soul of Orlando's arts community. What's your take on the latest developments when it comes to funding? What do you think?
Florida, I think we're home to some of the most world-renowned artists, performing artists, visual artists in the world, musicians, and so just to see that that cut happen, I think we all took a blow when we saw that because we knew what that meant for a lot of us. We know what it already has been. You know, working in the arts, being an artist has already been quite difficult, right? The term starving artist, right? Mm-hmm. That thing is real for a lot of us, especially when you go into even further marginalized communities, right? So when you think of that, it really, was gut-wrenching, but, at the same time, thankfully I have a great community, great mentors, and a lot of them have been parted, just hope, just thinking of, okay, we are artists, right? And we can be creative enough to think ourselves out of it, create ourselves into, just supporting each other as a community. And so I think that's been my take on it, my outlook so far.
Yeah, you've talked about your organization hitting a financial bump in the road, Justin. You lost your CEO, Terrence Hunter, who's been here on the program before. What's happening at Central Florida Community Arts, and what's your take on that elimination of grant funding and how it affects you?
Well, on a larger scope, this is the latest kind of blow in years worth of challenges financially for the arts. All of us are familiar with what happened during COVID and the impact that had on our businesses and our audiences and the people who benefit and experience from the work that we all do. And so it's been a little bit of kind of one domino falling after another. And this one, just at the time that we're all making sure our programs have recovered fully and that the needs of our community are being met, to have our work essentially evaluated as not essential is a real kick to a lot of us in our community. So we are trying to make sure that every need is met. And often what happens is people can put arts funding into a really comfortable bucket. Yeah. It's hard to feel deeply if you can hide it under a generic term like the arts. But when you talk about children and families, when you talk about community development, the services wrapped up inside that pretty bow of arts funding are really specific, necessary social and community well-being services.
There has been a 184% increase since a camera was put on our phones. There's been a 184% increase in mental health issues being reported in schools around the world. Arts helps break down those barriers and get kids more comfortable with themselves.
A large amount of our work and our research at Central Florida Community Arts is in the intersection of arts and health and arts and wellness, arts and medicine, the places where the arts have research behind them to prove that they increase well-being, they help with mental health concerns. They make communities more vibrant, and when a community is vibrant, your schools get better, everything else in your community gets better. When a business wants to attract employees to an area, often they're gonna research housing, they're gonna research schools, and then they're gonna research culture. Is this a place my family will want to live? Is this a place that there are things for us to do or places for us to belong? And that is a really vital role that we play across the spectrum. And the research supports that the arts are essential to a community's well-being.
Mariah.
Well, I come from communities where the arts was not as accessible, right? We didn't have galleries, we didn't have museums as accessible as other neighborhoods had growing up. All that we had was the time where we had the field trips, right? In grade school to the Bob Carr, or those one-off situations. That was my only experience in the theater. Thank God for the school system, right, to be able to provide that opportunity. With that, I'm sure grants plays a big part in that, right? Being able to fund that experience. So when you think about that, how that impacts generationally, different communities, like the communities that I come from, it's really sad to see that is something that we know will have an impact on that exposure and that access. Also thinking even further, as an artist here in Central Florida, in Florida, all the work that you've seen, the murals and things like that, we, believe it or not, have not been able to benefit from a state grant.
Yeah.
So, but still we're saddened, right? Because we know that there's a trickle-down effect, right? Because the partners that we work with or the collaborators that may have been able to benefit, maybe they're unable to partner because they don't have the funding, right? And that collaboration may not be able to happen because the resources aren't there. So those are things that we're all thinking about as artists, as practicing artists, and also as a curator where my role is to support artists as well as create in this community. So that's kind of where I am at as a curator, or as an artist trying to decipher what's next, right? And many of the people in my community that identify as BIPOC artists, or just artists in general that are younger, that are of my generation, millennial, they're wondering, should I leave? Should I stay? Is Florida going to be able to sustain my career and my practice? And so that's something that we have to think about. How do we keep our amazing talent here in Florida? How do we keep them here and to create that sense of home, right?
Well, you guys are nodding. What do you think?
I completely agree. Mariah's used the word access or accessibility several times in this conversation. And so if you can agree to the core belief that what an arts organization or an artist is doing is vital to a community's well-being, therefore everyone needs to have access to it. Therefore, it can't be hidden behind a paywall. Right. It can't be something that has even more barriers to entry, like you were talking about, which is where philanthropy and funding comes in, is because if this is supposed to change the lives of kids and families, like Orlando Family Stage does, like we attempt to do, you can't price it at a point that they'll never have access to it. So it really does come down to the core belief that what you are doing is going to transform where you live, and that everyone deserves to see themselves in that work. Therefore, it has to be, the funding has to be accessible. The ability to see it, to experience it, to participate in it needs to be universal. And that's where the funding has to come from everything. It can't be something that is sustained only on ticket sales or earned revenue, because that's a paywall, that's a barrier for entry that our community shouldn't have.
I think about this a lot because we're the only arts organization in the state of Florida that serves children 100% of the time. And what that means is we have many decades of respecting that audience, listening to that audience, and understanding and meeting them where they are. I think many arts organizations, they tend to talk down to kids. They tend to think that kids are not intelligent enough to understand. And what that does is it puts up yet another barrier to entry, right? A kid feeling comfortable going down to the Dr. Phillips Center and seeing a big Broadway show, right? Like that's a big deal, and it costs a lot. So there's a lot of investment to get that child into that space. We need to be more like those New England states. I lived in Connecticut for 7 years. In New England, it's understood and it's a given. Everyone takes their children to the arts. Everyone, no matter social class, it's everywhere because they have hundreds of years of philanthropy and families saying it's important.
One thing that I do believe Central Florida has an advantage at is collaboration. The arts community here, the leaders, we talk, we connect, we work together. There isn't any of us that aren't aware that we can build a bigger pie together. And so I think you're also going to see a lot of us collaborating over the course of the next year, because this situation has brought that really to the forefront of our minds.
Final word to you, Chris.
There's a reason that our art forms have been around for thousands of years. They're not going anywhere. It's an instinctual human need to gather in a place and experience something. And so we're not going anywhere. But that persistence that we have to keep going is also dangerous, because it tells people that we don't need the support. And I want to try to change the conversation in our community to funnel as much support to the arts community as physically possible, because when all of these groups are thriving, some really incredible things are going to happen in our community.
Well, I wish you guys all the best of luck, and I really appreciate your time here today. A reminder, you can find much more about the arts organisations we've heard from tonight on our programme. Visit us online at wucf.org/newsnight along the bottom of your screen. But that is all the time we have for this week. My thanks to Chris Brown from the Orlando Family Stage, Mariah Rowan from the Art of Collab, and Justin Machoni from Central Florida Community Arts. Thank you guys so much for coming in here today. Really appreciate your time. We'll see you next Friday night at 8:30 here on WCF. From all of us here at Newsnight, take care and have a great week.